Ser mandaloriano no solo es aprender a luchar. También hay que saber navegar por la galaxia.
Hi, I'm Berta from your cartelera, Spain.
Hello.
When planning this season, did you talk about all of those fans that haven't watched the Book of Boba Fett?
Yeah, I think, look, I learned a lot from working with Marvel, that the audiences are very sophisticated and they communicate a lot. So there are some people maybe who didn't watch Book of Boba Fett and they saw at the end of season 2 years ago that they separated. Grogu went off to train with Luke Skywalker. The Mandalorian said goodbye. But in the interim, time has passed and the stories have continued. And I know that, like with the Avengers, people were able to follow new characters that came in. And I think thanks to YouTube and how much content the fans are creating, there's ways to catch up and figure it out if you haven't done all your homework. Also, we're going to be putting up some catch-up videos on Disney Plus to make sure everybody knows what to expect in case they don't want to go through all the trouble of doing that themselves and seeking it out. And we'll also point people to certain episodes if they want to just watch the chapters that speak to it. So hopefully the people will be able to follow. But it was important to me to have progress between the relationship. And I know that when you see them apart, it feels very, both characters don't seem too happy. And so when we jump back in now, 2 years later to season 3, I wanted to make sure that central relationship was restored.
Talking about that ending, the ending of season 2, it's been a while, and back then, Cara Dune had an important role. What's going to happen with this character? Did you consider a recast, maybe?
It's covered in the show, so I don't want to spoil anything.
When you made the decision of doing that storyline in the Book of Boba Fett, was because you needed to do that in that series, or because you thought maybe we can attract some of the audience of The Mandalorian to this series?
Oh, I don't know. Because they all the stories, and Ahsoka as well, and Skeleton Crew, 2 shows that are now in post-production, they all exist within the same time frame. And so these characters can overlap and cross over. I think audiences are comfortable with that dynamic right now, especially from what they've seen in Marvel and other superhero franchises. And even Fast and Furious, I think that's part of the cinematic language right now. But no, it wasn't. I always write things that I think are the next things that should happen in the story development and with the characters. And I knew time had to be spent with them apart, but I didn't necessarily want to have to show that on camera the whole time because it wasn't as interesting for the audience. But we took the time and checked in with them during that show and overlapped their storylines with those characters so that it justified why they should be involved so that they could team up, and it allowed us to cover some ground that I didn't want to have to spend a season of The Mandalorian with them showing them apart because it wasn't fun for the characters, and so for me as somebody who cares about the characters who's writing them, I didn't want to spend too much time, but I did feel that it was important to the story to cover that.
You've already said in a previous interview that you've written season 4 because you needed to map out the story. Did you consider beyond that, beyond that?
Oh yeah, Dave Filoni and I speak a lot because now we have many shows that are taking place in this time frame. So we have to make sure that we know where everything's going, and we have to keep track of the calendar as far as what's happening in Star Wars because we fit between 2 different movies. So there's a 30-year period that we have to understand what's going on. And there's other material that covered this time period that has not historically been part of canon, but there's still storylines and characters that the fans have reacted to. And in an effort to kind of unify all of Star Wars and bring everything together into one consistent group of characters and plot lines, we think long and hard about it and talk about all the different possibilities that we have. So yes, we lay it out. There's a lot of conversations that take place in front of a big whiteboard and magic markers, figuring out what could happen.
There's a lot of things in common between Marvel and Star Wars, these 2 main franchises of Disney, and you've worked in both. So I'm interested in your opinion about this. Marvel has decided to slow down because there were too many shows premiering too close from one another. This is also a Star Wars problem. Liam Neeson seems to think so.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is understanding the way people want to engage with stories. It used to be that you'd have a movie every few years, and then another sequel, a prequel trilogy came out 30 years later. So the cadence was much different. We're learning from the audience what they want. And we also want to preserve what's special about all of these characters and franchises. So I think we've hit a good rhythm here. Now it's been 2 years since people saw The Mandalorian, and I think there's a lot of anticipation. The truth is also it just takes a long time to make these shows, and we rush to get them done in about half the time of a film, and we're showing about 2 or 3 times as much story as far as just how many minutes that we're creating of it. But I don't think people want the old TV model either, where they're just looking at 22 episodes, a half hour each, that you're writing while you're making it. I think people want the amount of care that we put into this. So I think it's a whole new world, and hopefully we're striking the right balance, but the fans will tell us.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Está ocurriendo algo peligroso. Y cuando os veáis forzados a tomar partido, ya será tarde.
Agárrate, chaval.